Hello, everyone. My name is Srishti and I am a digital transformation consultant here at Hyperbots. Today, I'm delighted to have John Silverstein as my guest. Thank you so much for taking out the time, John.
No problem. Happy to be here.
So, definitely, and it's so great to host you always. And so, just a little bit about John for our viewers. He is the VP of FP&A at Extreme Reach. And today we'll be discussing various late payment terms and leveraging AI for optimal financial management. John, let's start with a very basic question. Can you explain the different types of late payment terms and how they impact a buyer's financial strategy?
Yeah, sure. Late payment terms, they define the consequences for not adhering to the actual agreed upon payment schedule. So these terms can include penalties, either fixed fees, percentage base, interest charges, etc. A fixed fee might be $50 for every overdue invoice. And it depends on the industry and like the standards that you're in of what you would normally see. A percentage would be like 1.5% if it's late. And then interest charges accumulate just like it's a loan. So those are different and that can add up, but it gives you some flexibility versus a 1.5%. If you can extend those and things, it can benefit you depending on your money cost. So these terms impact the buyer's financial strategy by incentivizing the timely payments, whether you pay on time or those things, and your agreements with the actual vendors. There's also other impacts besides just pay if you're not adhering that could happen to for like work stoppage and things.
Understood. That makes sense. How do fixed fees as late payment penalties come to basically compare to percentage-based fees for buyers?
Yeah, the fixed fees are very straightforward and you know what you're going to pay and it doesn't matter the amount. So that can be, it depends on, again, how much you're buying and things like that, whether it's significant or not. But typically, like a $50 fee for any late payment provides, it's predictable and disproportionately high for small invoices, but it's very low for large invoices. Or on the other hand, if you are getting a percent charged monthly for an
Mhm.
invoice, outstanding balance, that can scale with the invoice size. So it can make it much bigger penalty and can really eat into your margin and into your additional cost of capital as well. So it can accumulate quickly and it can lead to significant costs and late payments. And you have to be understanding of the predictability of these fixed fees against the potentially escalating costs of percentage-based terms if you're not paying on time and making those decisions.
I see. And that is something to definitely keep in mind. What role do interest charges play in late payment terms, and how should buyers approach them?
Yeah, interest charges on overdue payments, they are a deterrent against late payments and it increases the amount owed over time. It's similar to your percentage based, except it's interest, so it's accumulated by day typically, and that annual interest rate could be 12%. It could translate to 1% monthly charge, or it could be greater, and there can be sometimes combinations of these fees as well. And additionally, negotiating the lower interest rates for caps on maximum charges can be effective because you don't want to end up paying more than what your invoice was or those types of things. But of course, there's the penalties, and everyone's trying to protect themselves too from to actually get paid on time. It also varies, just point out, by jurisdiction as well, particularly when you get into international, whether these are legal or which ones can even be charged, or if it's there's other consequences for not paying on time.
Understood. That makes sense. And can you describe how grace periods work in late payment terms and their benefits for buyers?
Yep. So the grace periods, it's a buffer after the payment due date in which payments can be made without incurring the penalties. And these makes a lot of sense too, just because of the process and timing to actually get a payment cut to a vendor and because of the payment processes within companies. So these can be beneficial, but it needs to be factored in on both sides on what the cost and the implications are. A 10-day like grace period after a net 30 term allows buyers additional time to actually process the payments without getting the late fees. This can be beneficial to manage an unforeseen cash flow issue and administrative delays. However, buyers should use the grace periods judicially to avoid developing a habit of late payments, which can strain your vendor relationships and make it harder as pricing. Whenever you're pricing these things, you're expecting to be paid on time. And if you to factor in grace periods and all that, it gets a little more complicated and it can cost your vendors more money.
I see, and that's very insightful. How can service stoppage or suspension as a consequence of late payments affect a buyer's operation?
Yeah, so it can affect the buyer. It depends on the industry and things, but if you're stopping the operations, it can severely impact the goods or services that you're looking to acquire due to the overpayments. This can disrupt your operations. It can lead to delays in production, loss of revenue, loss of customers in the end, damage to your relationships. You may have to prepay in the future. Your payment terms can also be changed due to continuing to pay late, or going back to actual contract terms if you were getting some leniency in the past, and you won't be able to get that leniency going forward quite often. So it's very crucial that you understand the consequences of the late payments and you have that communication lines with your actual vendors. If a software provider suspends access to critical systems because of unpaid invoices, that can halt your whole business. And you should also prioritize those payments so you know which ones are critical systems and things like that, so you don't get the disruptions that can actually impact your revenue or your entire business shut down. But those are very effective, being on the vendor side as well, or to get paid. And that when most customers or vendors and companies out there, they know who pays and who doesn't pay and who you have to pay and don't have to pay. So if you put those, if you're consistent, it also, I think, brings a level of professionalism if you actually adhere to your terms and your contracts.
No, absolutely. And that is something we should keep in mind when making those decisions. And what are the implications of collections and legal action for buyers facing persistent late payments?
Yeah, when late payments continue to persist, vendors can escalate. They can go to collection agencies. They can take legal action and to recover the amounts owed, which again, it's not just the amounts owed. It goes back to the penalties, the terms, and everything in your contract, and it can impact your business significantly if it goes there, and your future business too, as your terms may change. So this can have severe implications for buyers. Your credit scores can go down. You might not be able to get references to go get a new vendor and things, and you may get even an industry reputation of paying late and things, and no one will want to do business with you. So it's not a best practice to continue to pay late, and you often won't be able to get away with it for very long, because it impacts obviously your vendors' financials as well. Legal fees can also be accumulated, and they can come after you for that. Your relationships, as I stated, you also being sent to collections, your buyer's ability to secure favorable credit terms in the future may not happen. And those payment issues proactively by communicating with the vendors, you need to make sure that you do that, because if you end up having to prepay everything, that's a funding need that you may not be able to get, and it becomes even more difficult to get the funding if you're not paying your vendors on time.
Understood. And that is definitely scary. So buyers should be on the lookout for that. So, how do negative credit reporting and future credit term restrictions influence a buyer's approach to late payments?
Yeah, the negative credit reporting, it occurs when a buyer's late payments are reported to the credit bureaus. It adversely affects your credit score and the recommendation of your actual credit limits and things that the bureaus will recommend to other vendors. And you can have reductions not just by the vendor that you late paid, but you can actually lose credit in other vendors because of this. So this can limit your access to financing for anything, and your borrowing costs can go up, your penalties can go up. Future credit terms, again, can be a lot more unfavorable. Getting the shorter payment periods or requiring upfront payments, those things can really change and impact your business based on your payment history. So if a buyer with a history of late payments needs to switch from that 30 to cash on delivery, that can impact your cash flow significantly, where you may not even be able to do business anymore. It can lead to bankruptcy.
That's a huge impact, honestly. And what strategies can buyers employ to mitigate the impact of additional charges and costs associated with late payments?
Yeah, the biggest thing is negotiating and communicating upfront on what's required for you to do business. Generally, I find that it's a win-win. Obviously, your vendors are making money from you, and you can make money if you're negotiating the right terms and you're aligned with, you have to align your vendor terms with your customer terms as well. So you're not having that money cost flow. So having that open communication is obviously very helpful with your vendors, and you can monitor these due dates. You can negotiate lower penalty fees or caps on additional charges to limit the financial strain. But the key is to be open with your vendors and to have them understand why you need the terms that you need rather than paying late and having the terms. And it can be better to have it in your actual prices and things and just make sure that you have the right terms to begin with. Maintain that open communication is key, as I stated before. And if there are going to be payment delays, explain to your vendors, have that communication, and it'll save those relationships and maybe prevent any additional penalties or things like that. And you may be able to get extensions or avoid these extra costs.
Absolutely, that's very helpful. How can incentives for early on time payments benefit buyers in managing late payment terms?
Incentives for early or on-time payments that can actually impact your margin significantly too, and can be taken advantage of. It depends again on your cash situation and when you get paid by customers and whether you can match it and all that stuff. So it's important to understand it. But if you can get rewards programs or other things, it can help you. For example, a 210 net 30 term offers a 2% discount if the invoice is paid within 10 days. It's nice to increase your margin by 2% if you can, but it may actually reduce if your money cost is higher than that. So it varies, and you need to make those decisions appropriately and look at all the factors. Loyalty and reward programs as well can be helpful. There's, I would say, rebate programs too, and things for making on time or things like that that can really benefit. You can also, through AP programs and stuff that are out there, you might be able to flex some of these payments as well and get better rates and better terms and not impact your relationships with your vendors. So these incentives they help the buyers reduce the cost. It will strengthen your relationship, and you'll have better and more favorable terms in the future.
Understood, and that's very helpful. What are flexible payment arrangements, and how can they serve as alternatives to strict late payment penalties?
Yeah, the flexible payment arrangements, they could be payment plans or temporary extensions. So you might not pay a balance in full. You might pay it over several months and things, or you may pay a deposit not on the full amount. So this is an alternative to strict payment penalties, and this can obviously be a win-win if the vendor needs cash and things too. You can pay, maybe satisfy all the needs by making a partial upfront deposit so they can secure or manufacture or whatever their business is in, that they can get that done. A vendor might agree to that, a payment plan, because it gets cash in the door, which can benefit them as well. So those are important things. Extensions can also be helpful for payment obligations, and that prevents financial hardships. It keeps both of you in business. So it's a win-win if you can structure these deals correctly, and it can benefit obviously both companies from a revenue perspective.
I see. Very interesting. How does Hyperbots Payment AI Copilot assist in identifying and optimizing late payment terms for buyers?
Yeah, Hyperbots Payment AI Copilot, it plays a pivotal role in managing and optimizing late payment terms by leveraging advanced machine learning algorithms to analyze the payment data in real time. It can also identify patterns and trends in payment behaviors to benchmark terms against industry standards. It highlights opportunities for improvement. For example, the AI Copilot, it can detect frequent late payments with specific vendors and recommend strategies to either negotiate or change or make more favorable terms. Or it can also highlight just that there's something going on when payments are late, and you can have those conversations with the vendor. Extending the payment periods, reducing those penalties, it's critical. Additionally, it can provide actionable insights to analytic reports, enabling buyers to make data-driven decisions on how they can impact cash flow management and minimize the impact of those late payments. It automates the analysis for those recommendations. Hyperbots Payment AI Copilot ensures also that the buyers can proactively manage the payment obligations and maintain a stronger relationship with the vendors.
That's very insightful. And what advice would you give to other CFOs on effectively negotiating the late payment terms using AI tools like Hyperbots Payment AI Copilot?
Yeah, other CFOs, I would integrate AI tools like either Hyperbots Payment Copilot into their financial systems so they can have that comprehensive visibility into their payment practices. And then they can have AI driven insights to identify reoccurring late payment issues and understand the vendor payment preferences and benchmark against industry standards so that you can make adjustments and get to a better relationships again. You can negotiate late payment terms or negotiate your actual terms that you won't have to pay late all the time. So showcasing your company's commitment to timely payment and adhering to terms of the contracts and things is critical, and that helps with the AI Copilot can simulate the different payment strategies and help you negotiate and understand what is a win-win situation. CFOs can also enhance their negotiation capabilities by optimizing these terms and foster these relationships with the vendors.
Understood. That's very helpful. And with that, we have come to an end for today's discussion. Thank you so much for joining us, John, and sharing your insights. Also, big thanks to our viewers. I will see you around. Have a good one. Goodbye.